Imagine walking through a city built 4,000 years ago with straight streets, complex plumbing, and multi-story houses. Now, imagine finding that entire city frozen in time, not by age, but by a sudden, terrifying heat that turned bricks into green glass. In the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, researchers found something that shouldn't exist: skeletons scattered in the streets, some holding hands, showing no signs of wounds, yet their bones were radioactive. What could possibly incinerate a civilization in a heartbeat before the invention of gunpowder? Today on Wikivedia Plus, we will unveil the mystery of the city that disappeared in one night. Let's dive in. To understand the tragedy, we first have to see the glory. Mohenjo-Daro wasn't just a village, it was the New York of its time. Built around 2500 BCE in what is now Pakistan, it was part of the Indus Valley civilization. These people were geniuses. While the rest of the world was living in mud huts, the citizens of Mohenjo-Daro had underground sewage systems, public baths, and standardized baked bricks. They had a level of urban planning that many modern cities would envy. Imagine a world where every house had access to clean water and a drainage system. This wasn't just progress, it was a miracle of engineering. But then, in the blink of an eye, the heartbeat of this city stopped. When archaeologists first excavated the site in the 1920s, they expected to find a city that slowly decayed over time, perhaps due to a river changing its course or a slow decline in trade. Instead, they found a scene straight out of a horror movie. Scattered across the city were dozens of skeletons. This wasn't a cemetery or a ritual burial site. These people died where they stood, caught in the middle of their daily lives. Some were lying in the middle of the road. Others were found in groups, holding hands as if facing a sudden terror together. What makes this even more chilling is that there were no swords, no arrows, and no signs of a military invasion. No skeleton showed signs of struggle or trauma from weapons. So, what killed them so quickly that they didn't even have time to run? Here is where it gets truly weird. In certain areas of the city, researchers found vitrified soil. This is a fancy way of saying the sand and bricks had been heated so intensely that they turned into glass. Think about that for a second. To turn a mud brick or common sand into glass, you need temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius. In the ancient world, there was no fire, no furnace, and no known volcanic activity in that region that could generate that kind of heat across an entire city block. It looked exactly like the sand at a modern nuclear test site after a detonation. This vitrification wasn't a slow process. It was a flash of heat so intense it liquefied stone. If the people of Mohenjo-Daro didn't die from war or disease, and the heat was enough to melt stone, are we looking at a natural disaster? Or a weapon of mass destruction used thousands of years before we thought possible? When Soviet scholars like Agarbovsky analyzed the bones found at the site, they reported something that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The levels of radiation found in those 4,000-year-old skeletons were more than 50 times higher than the natural background level. To put that in perspective, it was similar to the radiation levels found in the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This led to a radical theory. Did an ancient nuclear explosion happen here? As crazy as it sounds, ancient Indian texts like the Mahabharata describe weapons called Agnya that could produce a pillar of smoke and fire as brilliant as 10,000 suns. The texts say this weapon caused hair and nails to fall out, made food poisonous, and turned water to steam. It is a description that matches a nuclear fallout with terrifying accuracy. But how could a civilization in 2500 BC possess such power? Some researchers suggest that the Indus Valley people were far more advanced than we give them credit for. Their writing system, the Indus script, remains undeciphered to this day. We see symbols of strange vehicles and celestial events that don't fit into our standard historical timeline. Perhaps they discovered a form of energy that we are only now rediscovering. Or perhaps, as some fringe theorists suggest, they weren't alone. They might have been the victims of a conflict between higher powers, using the Earth as their battlefield. The absence of a crater is the main argument used by skeptics, but let's look closer at the physics of destruction. Not every massive blast leaves a hole in the ground. If an object, like a small comet or a sophisticated weapon, detonates several kilometers above the surface, it creates what is known as an airburst. The heat travels downward in a massive thermal pulse, followed by a shock wave that flattens buildings like toothpicks. This perfectly matches the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, where the upper levels of buildings are gone, but the foundations remain. It also explains the skeletons in the streets. They weren't crushed by falling walls. They were stopped by the invisible hand of heat and radiation. Think about the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro. It was a massive, watertight pool lined with bitumen. For a long time, historians thought it was for religious rituals, but what if it was for something else? In a city that faced extreme heat, or perhaps needed to decontaminate, a massive public water source would be the most valuable asset. The engineering required to keep that bath waterproof for 4 millennia is staggering. It shows a society obsessed with cleanliness and water management, almost as if they were preparing for an environmental catastrophe. The tragedy of Mohenjo-Daro is not just in how they died, but in what was lost. When this city vanished, the knowledge of their plumbing, their standardized weights, and their urban planning vanished with them. It took humanity another 3,000 years to reach that level of civic engineering again. This isn't just a story of a lost city, it's a story of a massive reset button being pushed on human progress. If Mohenjo-Daro had survived, where would we be today? Would we already be traveling the stars? Compare Mohenjo-Daro to Pompeii. In Pompeii, we see the ash and the volcano. We know exactly what happened. But in Mohenjo-Daro, the enemy was invisible. The skeletons show no signs of fleeing. They weren't running toward the gates. They were walking home, sitting in their houses, or standing in the marketplace. Whatever happened, it was faster than the speed of human reaction. It was a flash, a roar, and then eternal silence. The radioactive levels in the epicenter of the city are still higher than the surrounding areas today. Local legends in the region have always warned people to stay away from the place of the dead. They spoke of a black light that ate the shadows and turned the air to fire. Modern science is only now catching up to these ancient warnings. We are finding more sites like this lunar crater in India, for example, where the glass and the minerals suggest an impact or explosion of unimaginable force in the distant past. As we look at the glass-covered bricks of this ancient metropolis, we are forced to ask, how much of our history have we forgotten? Are we the first advanced civilization on Earth, or are we just the latest in a long cycle of rise and fall? Mohenjo-Daro is a puzzle that science can observe, but cannot yet explain. As we point our modern sensors at these ancient bones, we are looking for the truth about our past, and perhaps a glimpse into our future. The bricks may be silent, but the glass and the bones tell a story of a night when the sun came down to Earth. We may never know for certain if it was a meteor, a nuclear accident of the gods, or a natural phenomenon we haven't discovered yet. But the evidence of extreme heat, the radioactive remains, and the sudden cessation of life point to an event that changed the course of history. Mohenjo-Daro stands as a monument to the fragility of civilization. One day you are building the world's most advanced sewage system, and the next, you are a radioactive skeleton holding hands with a stranger in a street made of glass. As the echoes of today's story fade back into the archive, we are left once again at the edge of the unknown. Thank you for journeying with us to the fringes of history and science. If these mysteries resonated with you, we invite you to support the channel by liking this video and subscribing to our growing community of seekers. Share this transmission on your social networks. Your curiosity is what keeps these stories alive. We will return soon with another chapter that was never meant to be told. Until our next encounter, stay curious. This is Wikivedia Plus.